everyone, welcome back. I'm Kris. This is Texas Revolution, Battle of the Alamo. This is part 2. It's going to be a little bit longer. The first one was a setup for the battle itself. So we will get ready to get into the battle. There's a thanks button on the channel. You can donate. If you do, you can request videos still, but if you do, your name will just be put on there as sponsored for the video. Subscribe if you'd like to, and thumbs up, bare minimum, please. All right, let's get into the battle.
Entrenchments to avoid the deadly Texian rifles. Bowie collapses after days of declining health. Nobody's sure what Bowie contracted, but the most likely cause is pneumonia. Whatever the affliction is, Bowie is unable to function as a commander. He instructs his volunteers to obey Travis.
I didn't realize he got sick. Or I forgot.
Now with command over everybody, Travis gets his men ready for the siege. With the guns now in place, the Mexicans begin to bombard the Alamo. Travis first orders his men to trade shot for shot. However, after seeing how much powder he is wasting, he calls his men off to conserve their ammunition in the event of an assault. Except for his riflemen, who rarely miss. On February 24th, Travis writes an open letter to the settlers of Texas, with hopes of encouraging all those who can assist him. To the people of Texas and all Americans in the world, fellow citizens and compatriots, I am besieged by 1,000 or more of the Mexicans under Santa Anna. I have sustained a continual bombardment and cannonade for 24 hours and have not lost a man. The enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion, otherwise, the garrison are to be put to the sword if the fort is taken. I have answered the demand with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly over the walls. I shall never surrender or retreat. Then, I call on you in the name of liberty, of patriotism, and everything dear to the American character to come to our aid with all dispatch. The enemy is receiving reinforcements daily and will no doubt increase to 3,000 or 4,000 in 4 or 5 days. If this cause is neglected, I am determined to sustain myself as long as possible and die like a soldier who never forgets what is due to his own honor and that of his country, victory or death. Only time will tell if his address stirs up the required assistance to aid him in his hour of need. As Travis's victory or death letter circulates around Texas, various Texian detachments plan their own intervention and rally at Gonzales for a concentrated drive. However, everybody looks to Colonel Fannin and his force of 450 men to march to the Alamo's rescue. Out of all the Texian forces, Fannin's is the largest and best prepared to take on the Mexican army surrounding the Alamo. The men are ready to march out to his sister comrades trapped in the fort, but the commander, Fannin, is not. Even with a military background, Fannin is unassertive and struggles to command his volunteers. At the same time, a disjointed provisional government issues no orders for Fannin, leaving him wanting. On February 26, after 2 days of indecision, Fannin reluctantly starts his men out on the 90-mile road towards the Alamo. For an army marked with strong-willed commanders, Fannin is a considerable outcast. Just as Fannin's command reaches a mile from Goliad, his supply wagons break down, and so does his resolve for the rescue mission. Not wanting to press any further, he returns to Goliad. To complicate matters even more, he receives a report that Urrea's force has crossed the river into Texas and is heading straight for Goliad. Now that another invasion is underway in the southern part of Texas, Fannin decides that Goliad is the most logical point to defend against Urrea's force and stays put. Meanwhile, in Gonzales, on February 27th, 25 men leave to reinforce their comrades in the Alamo. Even though Travis makes it clear that 1,000 or more Mexicans surround the fort, these men gamely ride on. By the time they reach the outskirts of Behar on the night of the 29th, their number has grown to 33 men. The Gonzales company sneaks past the Mexican sentries and rides toward the fort. As the men near the Alamo, a man is shot when a skittish defender fires into the unidentified crowd. Once the defenders realize they are reinforcements, the gates are thrown open and the Gonzales men ride into the compound, increasing the garrison's force to 189 men. The excitement of the long-awaited reinforcements quickly changes to gloom as they realize how few actually arrive to assist them. However, Travis is not going to let this dampen his men's spirits. On March 1st, the garrison throws a celebration for the arrival of the Gonzales men. In honor of their comrades, Travis allows them to fire 2 shots from each cannon. While the siege of the Alamo
Don't do that. It's wasting ammo. Don't do that.
continues, a new convention is organized to replace a consultation that has devolved into chaos. This time, however, with a majority of delegates being pro-independence. On March 1st, the convention convenes in Washington on the Brazos with Richard Ellis presiding as president. With the majority favoring independence, a committee is formed to get straight to work drafting a resolution. On March 2nd, the convention approves the declaration. The Republic of Texas is born. Once independence is achieved, the convention forms a new government inspired by the United States with David G. Burnett as its interim president. Meanwhile, Sam Houston has been a bystander at the convention due to his limbo status as a general. Once again, he is chosen to be the commander-in-chief. This time, however, Houston demands the authority of all Texian forces, which the delegates grudgingly accept. With authority over the entire Texian military, Houston works on forming an army to march to the Alamo's rescue. As delegates form a new nation, the situation for the Alamo continues to deteriorate. Mexican artillery has relentlessly bombarded the old walls every day since the beginning of the siege, forcing the defenders to repair their breaches every night, which proves to be only a temporary measure. By March 3rd, word reaches Travis that Fannin will not be coming to his aid, adding to the further gloom among the defenders. By this point, Travis accepts the fact that it is only a matter of time before the Alamo falls. In Behar, Santa Anna receives more reinforcements, increasing his number to 3,100. However, despite receiving more men, the general grows increasingly impatient with the lack of progress against the Alamo garrison. On March 5th, his patience runs out, and the irritated general calls his officers together to propose an assault, citing morale. The officers are taken aback by this proposal. They all know that the Alamo's walls are crumbling, the garrison is no real threat, and no relief force has been sighted. They try to convince Santa Anna to wait for the...
Were the other leaders, were they just trying to destroy the fort enough to just make the Texans give up? That's what it sounds like. Santa Anna was like, no, we need to raid it, because they're looking at it like we've got enough shot just to destroy the walls, and eventually that fort's going to be just in ruinous conditions. But there's no reason for them to stay there. They can't keep patching it up. And if that's working, but I'm guessing Santa Anna's thinking that everyone eventually will come to their protection, so we had to get it. I understand that. I kind of see it both ways, actually.
Siege guns to arrive, but to no avail. The general has already made his decision. The army will attack at 5 o'clock the next morning. With the attack orders set for the next morning, the Mexican artillery falls silent. In the camp, officers tell their men to get plenty of rest so they can be ready for tomorrow's fight. Santa Anna hopes that the defenders will use this lull to get some sleep. He wants to surprise the defenders and get his men over the walls before the Texians can defend themselves. After 12 days of almost constant bombardment, the exhausted Texians welcome the ominous silence and fall asleep, including those who are on picket duty. As the stroke of midnight marks the 13th day of the siege, the Mexican camp comes alive. As silence shrouds over the Alamo, the Mexican camp is buzzing with muffled activity as the troops prepare for the upcoming attack. Sergeants do what it takes to wake their men, either by tapping or kicking them. Once the men are up, they get their gear ready. Guns are loaded, bayonets are fixed, and ladders are handed out. The general wants it to be a quick fight. After quietly moving to their position, many troops stand shivering in the chilly air and have to wait for hours before all the men are ready. At 5:30 a.m., Santa Anna finally gives the order to attack. The plan calls for 2,000 men divided into 4 different columns to attack the Alamo at specific locations. The various units will attack in Napoleonic-style assault columns, hoping to overrun the defenders in an overwhelming mass. General Kos, in command of the first column, will assault the northwestern corner. General Francisco Duque, leading the second column, will attack the patched breach in the north wall. Colonel Jose Maria Romero's third column will attack the eastern wall. Finally, Colonel Juan Morales' fourth column will attack the compound's weak spot, the low-lying parapet next to the mission on the southeastern side. While the 4 columns attack, Santa Anna himself personally commands a reserve. General Joaquin Ramirez y Sesma, in command of the Army's cavalry, will encircle the fort, tasked with preventing both friend and foe from running from the fight. All the columns move towards their designated attack location in the moonless night. Skirmishers fan out in front of the columns and quietly dispatch the sleeping sentries with their bayonets as they move towards the walls undetected. However, as the soldiers near the looming walls of the Alamo, the tension finally becomes unbearable, and a nervous recruit breaks the silence by shouting, "Viva Santa Anna!" Soon, the lone soldier is joined by his comrades shouting, "Viva Republica!" waking the defenders of the Alamo. The groggy defenders are shocked at how close the Mexicans are to the Alamo. They grab their guns and run to the post to fire into the mass of soldiers. Travis, along with his slave Joe, run to the north wall, shouting to his men, "Come on boys, the Mexicans are upon us and we'll give them hell." Texian gunners cram their guns with whatever they have on hand, cannonballs or scrap pieces of metal, and let loose upon the approaching masses, blasting ghastly holes through their ranks. Those who are lucky not to be hit by shrapnel are splattered with the flesh and blood of their comrades. But despite this carnage, they push on. As Colonel Duque leads his men forward, he is hit in the thigh and almost trampled by his own men. General Castellan soon takes over command of the column and leads them forward. Even though the Texian defenders are dishing out an unrelenting storm of lead, they too are suffering. The Texians have to reveal themselves to shoot their guns and are shot dead by the Mexican infantry. Travis is one of the first to fall as he is killed instantly by a bullet to the head. With his master dead, Joe leaves the north wall and joins the other civilians to hide from the battle. Meanwhile, outside the walls, frustrated as men woke up the defenders and watching a debacle unfold, Santa Anna orders his reserves forward into the fight, with himself staying out of rifle range. Though both sides are suffering, the Mexicans are getting the worst of the fight. Not only are the attackers being mowed down by accurate rifle fire, they are also losing men from their comrades who blindly fire at the walls, hitting their comrades in front of them. On the north side, survivors of Kos and Castellan's columns merge together at the base of the wall, unable to get over without ladders. On the south side near the palisade, Morales' men are unable to get close due to Crockett and his Tennesseans mowing them down with their single cannon and rifles. With such torrential fire, Morales' men swing left towards the southwest corner in the 18-pounder. As the soldiers escape the killing fields out in the open, a new problem arises as without ladders, they cannot get over the 12-foot walls. The 9-pound cannon stationed in the north wall battery has done a decent job keeping the men carrying the ladders at bay. An officer complained that the few poor ladders that we were bringing had not arrived, because the bearers had either perished on the way or escaped. However, due to the crumbling nature of the north wall, the attackers decided to use the gaps to scale the patched barricade. Using the gaps as a ladder, General Juan Amador is the first man to get over the wall, challenging his men to do the same. These first men drop into the plaza and swing open the postern door, allowing the rest of the comrades to flood into the defensive perimeter. The fate of the Alamo is sealed. In other places, the defenders discover that it is becoming increasingly difficult to reload their slow rifles and try to fight back against the unrelenting mass of attackers climbing over the walls. Soon they are forced to abandon the walls entirely. The north wall becomes the first to fall. Seeing this, Texian gunners on the south end turn their cannon around to fire at the wave of Mexican soldiers rushing through the postern gate. Upon seeing the enemy artillery turn inward, Morales uses his momentary respite to lead his men over the walls and kill the crew of the 18-pounder before they are able to spike the gun. Around the same time, Romero's men take the eastern wall and pour into the cattle pens. At this point, the Mexicans control the majority of the walls. Unable to hold the walls any further, the surviving Texian defenders fall back to the long barracks to make their final stand. Crockett and his Tennesseans, who are still holding the picket fence, are forced to retreat to the chapel itself. The long barracks and chapel have been chosen as a last defensive position for the defenders in case the walls fall. They have been properly fortified with dirt parapets, strengthened doors, and holes to shoot through. For a time, the defenders are able to gun down anybody who gets close. To counter this, the Mexican attackers turn the 18-pounder upon the long barracks and blast open the doors. The attackers rush in and the two sides grapple with bowie knives, gun butts, and bayonets. Soon, the Mexican numbers are telling and the last Texians are killed, even those who try to surrender. A small band of defenders try to flee east by scrambling over the walls, but are soon run down and lanced by Mexican cavalry. Once the long barracks are cleared, the Mexicans systematically check the rest of the compound by going door to door, finishing off any defender they find. Too ill to fight himself, Bowie braces back against the wall and defended himself with pistols and his famous knife, but he is soon dispatched by the attackers. The last defenders to be killed are the ones in the chapel. Just like the long barracks, the Mexicans use the 18-pounder to blow open the door and the infantry rush in, firing and bayoneting those inside. Before all the defenders are killed, General Castellan orders his men to spare the last few men, Crockett and 6 others. By 6:30 a.m., after only an hour of fighting, the battle is over. The Alamo has fallen. Even after all the defenders have been killed or captured, skittish soldiers continue to shoot at shadows as the sun slowly rises in the early morning, revealing the carnage wrought by the battle. When he receives word that the Alamo has fallen, Santa Anna rides in to survey the aftermath. When the general is asked about the battle, Santa Anna simply responds by saying, "Much blood has been shed, but the battle is over. It was but a small affair." Seeing Santa Anna arrive within the confines, Castellan brings Crockett and the other prisoners forward and intercedes on their behalf. Keeping to his word, Santa Anna refuses to spare their lives and orders them to be executed. Despite annihilating the garrison, the Mexicans lost around 600 men killed or wounded, more than a quarter of the men who attacked. A tremendous rate compared to previous battles. With the Alamo conquered, the non-combatants, a few women, children, and slaves, are sent east to warn others of their fate if they stand up against Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. With the destruction of the Alamo garrison, Santa Anna finally has his victory over the Texians and relishes in the
I thought that Crockett was killed in the battle. I didn't realize he was spared and then executed. I didn't know that part. I also didn't know that Bowie had come down ill, as I said on the first one. So I thought he died fighting, like Travis. A lot of stuff I didn't really know about this battle, apparently.
glory of conquest. Despite the urges by his subordinates to make a swift drive against the scattered Texian forces, the general decides to remain in Behar for a few days to rest on his laurels. For Santa Anna, there is no rush. He destroyed the Alamo garrison, broke the defensive line that connected the Alamo to Fort Defiance, and sees no other fortified outpost that stands between him and the Sabine River. Meanwhile, General Urrea, in command of the secondary Mexican invasion, is making great strides and will soon be upon the perplexed garrison of Goliad. Santa Anna believes that once word gets around about his slaughter of the Alamo garrison, the Texians will flee back to the United States in droves, completing his job for him. However, for the Texians, the only impact of the slaughter of the Alamo garrison is a burning urge for vengeance. As the word reaches a gathering Texian army in Gonzales, the men are awakened to the reality of the perilous situation. Since the capture of Behar back in December, the Texians thought they had won the war. Now, with the arrival of Santa Anna and the fall of the Alamo, that feeling has been obliterated. If they want to survive, it is time to end the bickering, unite their forces, and face the victorious armies of Santa Anna. Outnumbered 6-1, the Texians look to one man to be the deliverer, General Sam Houston. Houston knows that if he has any chance of defeating either Santa Anna or Urea, he needs to gather all the Texian forces into a coherent force. As long as the various detachments are scattered throughout Texas, they will have no chance of standing up against the daunting Mexican army. Houston sends out orders to all his commanders to link up with his force in Gonzales. However, before Houston can gather his forces, General Urea makes a lightning strike through the coastal plain, mopping up all in his way, and is now right on the heels of Colonel Fannon's panicking troops.
Interesting. There's more. There was a whole Texas independence thing. I just picked this battle because, or the Texas Revolution. I just picked this battle because of the Alamo. I didn't really know enough. That was interesting. And it's stuff that either in school I just forgot, or I just didn't remember, or it's the same thing as forgot, or just didn't know. So I remember very little about Texas independence. Of course, I remember very little about the Mexican-American War from school. So anyways, we're going to end it here. I hope you enjoyed it, even though it was probably not the ending you were hoping for, but, everything works out in the end, I guess. So until next time, have a good day, have a good night.